In 2004, Toho went all out with their big budget final production, Godzilla Final Wars, which ended up putting the big guy into slumber and the Millennium series. From there, Yoshimitsu Banno, the director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah from the 70s, ended up getting the rights to Godzilla, ended up getting his hands on Godzilla, and he was going to make a Godzilla short, like 45-minute IMAX movie called Godzilla 3D. With a lot of that and major production hell and multiple companies trying to get their hands on it, and the deal ended up not working out. Legendary and this whole thing ended up getting their hands on the property of Godzilla, and with the help of Warner Brothers distributing the film, and director Gareth Edwards, an indie director that only had one project under his hands at the moment, which was Monsters, ended up producing and making what I consider one of the best Godzilla movies and one of my favorite movies ever made, Godzilla, or like a lot of fans like to dub it, Godzilla 2014. This film has always been something really amazing to me. From the first time I saw it in theaters, looking back on it now 6 years later, I already have nostalgia for it. It's a movie I love, it's my favorite movie in the Monsterverse, and it's one that I just really appreciate. It's a film that I think a lot of people look over some of the elements of it, and which is okay. It's all opinion based, but when I sit down and watch this movie, it's always meant something to me. I've seen it so many times, and I've bought multiple versions of it. And this film really just felt like a really proper Godzilla movie to me. Never once had any issues with it. You know, in this film, like I said, they brought in an indie director and gave this film a pretty low budget compared to like some of the other later installments. They didn't blow the budget, and it worked. It's beautiful. It's a really great movie to me, and I have a fun time with it. After, the failure of Godzilla 98, this was a fresh breath. This was a new way to introduce Godzilla to the American audience, and it's one that I think is very proper. It's a very proper Godzilla movie. It doesn't take risk. It doesn't take anything too much major. It's just a Godzilla movie. It's the closest thing to the classic Godzilla movies possibly we've ever gotten from, like, America. And before people start arguing about King of the Monsters, I'm mostly referring to early Showa era. But with that being said, let's just talk about this movie. This movie was one, like I said, 6 years old now. And it's just a project that's always meant a lot to me. I've always really enjoyed this film. It's just always been that one blockbuster that I've looked towards. And the amount of effort and just everything that went into this film has always really meant a lot to me. And it's something that is very unique and we don't get nowadays. I know Gareth Edwards wanted to base this movie off some of the 70s and 80s big action movies, or certain stuff like Jaws, or even like Jurassic Park, Alien, something that doesn't show off the main monster too much and really leaves the audience just drooling for more till the end. I know there's a lot of people that don't really like that in this film. I've personally never had an issue with it. A lot of the cutaways in this movie don't ever bother me. I've never found the cutaways in this movie to be that big of a problem. I would say the only one that's ever slightly bugged me is the airport one, which is honestly the opposite of what I've seen most people be bothered by. The cutaway later on before the final fight is the one that most people bug, but I don't really mind that one too much. But a lot of the cutaways in this film aren't that big of an issue with me. Especially after rewatching a lot of the older Godzilla films. Godzilla in this film in general has a lot more screen time than a lot of the old Godzilla films. And, his presence, he literally does just feel like he's like the old ones. He's just here to protect everyone. I really like this take on Godzilla. But, since we're talking about all this, what about the humans in this film? I know the humans are something that a lot of people think drags down this film, but for me personally, it never really has. I've actually really enjoyed the human portion of this movie, but it's just based on my interpretation. Obviously, Joe Brody is the best character in this movie, and Bryan Cranston's an amazing actor, and I can see to some extent it being a mistake, them killing him off in the first act, but I have seen interviews and stuff where Gareth did talk about that, and talk about how they have no scripts that they made that really made Joe feel like it was like proper. His character got completed his arc in this movie. He proved to everyone he wasn't crazy. His goal was never to meet Godzilla. He never had to. He did what he did. He proved to the world he was right the whole time. He showed his son he was right, and he set up his son for his son's journey. He put the burden that he had to face many years ago on his son, and that's where Ford's quest ends up taking him. He's an amazing actor. He has some of the most biggest emotional scenes in this movie I've ever seen. It's really crazy how like emotional these scenes get in a newer Godzilla movie. These are some of the emotion in some of these scenes is not stuff you've seen since like 54, and it's kind of crazy actually. And like I said, Joe, obviously Bryan Cranston's an amazing actor, and he's definitely the highlight of the movie. But he dies in the first act, and that's where it bums out a lot of people from this film. But personally, I've never personally had a problem from this point. I would say the second act is probably the weakest portion of the film. That is it's a little bit slowed down, just a little bit. I don't think it's overly slowed down, and I would say this is where Aaron Taylor Johnson's acting is possibly the weakest in the film, and where the dialogue gets the weakest. But it's nothing too crazy. It's a simple story, but you can look at it from different artistic standpoints. And the way I've always imagined it is, simply put, just Joe Brody's basically what he failed to do is on Ford. Let's talk about Ford for a second. I don't hate Ford. I don't even think he's that bad of a character. Obviously, some of the dialogue in this film is a little bit but I mean, it's not like an Oscar or anything. It's like not like Oscar level writing. It's nothing that crazy to me, and I never had to be. I've never really had that much of a problem with Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance. Do I think there's a few moments where he probably could have put a little bit more into it? Yes. There's a lot of the times. There are moments in the film where he straight up looks like he's about to break down and start crying. And moments like that, people don't really ever give him credit for. There are moments where he does actually show a lot of emotion, and overall he does feel more like a great character. I would say, especially in the first act when he's around Joe, they worked so well together as like a dynamic. And when Joe dies and puts that emotional heartfelt on Ford, it just leads us down his journey for the rest of the movie, where now in the future, where Joe failed to save his family, now it's on Ford, a soldier who, with a really extreme past trauma, joined the army, and now he has his emotions in check. He's went through a lot in his life, and he's done everything to get his emotions in check. While that's nothing blatantly said in the film, it's just a really good interpretation of it. It's not like he's some big muscular Hollywood star. He's a soldier that lost his mom at an early age and literally watched the factory melt down that day. His dad, he thought for years, was crazy, and now he just joined the military. He has a family. His life's good until he's brought back in by his dad. And now that the same monster that killed his mom's back out, he has to do the journey once more to save his family this time. Something that, again, his dad failed to do. And even a lot of the side characters in this film don't really bug me. Ken Watanabe, he's a great actor. He did the best with what he had, and what he has in this film isn't that bad. He's the one that works well. He's like the only character in this film that actually has really anything to do with Godzilla. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the Brodies, nothing with them and Godzilla. Their dynamic is they're complete oppositions from the Mutos, and that is due to the fact that, well, the Mutos have, destroyed their family, and they could possibly do it again. And Ford's mission is to stop that. On the other hand, Ken Watanabe is the one that really holds there, and in some ways he is kind of a vessel for a metaphor, but he also has a bit of character for him at some points. He's the one that goes against the army. He's the one that tries to tell everyone that nothing's going to work. And he's the only one that tries to speak any sort of reason. And just no one listens to him. I do like him as a character in this film. I think it's really good. Him and King of the Monsters are like two different characters. And, they're both good in their own way. But I do really like Ken Watanabe in this film. I really do appreciate, his work in this film. Some of his dialogue could be a little bland, but again, with this film, there isn't like insanely extreme dialogue. There isn't too many Godzilla films that really have these like really insane in-depth stories. There's definitely a few though that are really 54. You know, we always go back to that one, but that film is straight up a masterpiece. You know, but I digress. With other characters' films such as Elizabeth Olsen in them, with them being like really background characters, side characters, you know, secondary characters, not the main focus of the film, they do great with what they have to work with. The kid actor definitely be a little better, but I'm not gonna really, you know, punish him for that. You know, he was just a kid when they filmed this movie. But like with Elizabeth Olsen and them, you know, I do think all of them are great with what they had to work with. You know, their acting's fine. It's pretty good. You know, it's like nothing's really bad about it. They do their roles well. You know, Elizabeth Olsen's character is trying to, you know, help people, save people, but also protect her family and worry about her husband all at the same time. She does a great job in that role. And with all that, I've never had an issue with. I don't have too many issues with the humans. I definitely I think the middle portion of the film is a little weak. I also think it's partially because like there's not much in connection with like Aaron going on with the Mutos. There's some really cool interactions, but like there's not this like really strong connection with the monsters and the humans in the second act like there is in the first and the third act. Obviously with Joe Brody and obviously with the humans in the final battle. But let's talk about the Mutos real quick because I brought them up a lot. I love the Mutos in this film. I think design-wise, they're pretty cool. I don't think they're, like, insanely design-wise, like, interesting, although it is really interesting that they're confirmed to be mammals. But as an antagonist monster, you know, they're actually pretty enjoyable to watch. They are actually really shockingly sympathetic, too. You know, unlike something like a later film like King Ghidorah, maybe even the Skullcrawlers, they don't feel like just giant world-ending like creatures just out there like actually causing violence and want to kill everything. They're just animals. They don't really directly focus on people too much unless someone gets in their way. They're just trying to reproduce and, you know, live. In this film, presented as some of the last of their kind. And when they die, you know, it's really like, wow, their whole kind might be dead. Obviously, that ends up getting like. That's not the case later on, but when this film came out, it's like, you know, their whole species is dead. Like I said, they're shockingly like really sympathetic because they're presented in a different light than most, you know, evil monsters in Godzilla movies. They're just animals trying to survive, and that's what makes it really interesting when just these two monsters against the entire world and everyone hates them and just wants them to die. Not only that, but man, they are just really fun to watch. Personally, I think they're really fun to watch. They have some really good visuals with their EMP powers and the way their eyes, like whenever they touch and the way the like red just flashes down their eyes. And the sound effects, the sound design in this movie is insane. There's only like one portion of this film that has bad sound design. And that's like the Halo jump whenever Godzilla roars. But that's completely a different topic. But I'm just saying, with the Mutos, they're just, man, they really did the Mutos well in this movie. It's really surprising how well they did the Mutos. They were great, they're fun monsters, and they're a great introduction to the Monsterverse. And out of basically all the monsters in the Monsterverse, other than like Godzilla himself, they have the most lore and world building to them. And it's really, going back on this film, you know, I still do really enjoy them. As for Godzilla himself, obviously, he's the big hero of the movie that we all root for. He's like the last samurai. You know, he has to wake up to fight one more battle. And he just seems old. He's lumbering. He's not, you know, you can tell it seems like he just woke up. And it's like he doesn't want to do this anymore, but he's got to do it. And I love his design in this film. Weta did such an amazing job making his design. It's very detailed. It's very beautiful. The way he moves in this movie, it's so perfect. He's so animalistic. He moves like a bear. You know, he fights so brutally. I love the brutalness of this final fight. It's just so brutal. There's blood, you know, and I just love the way Godzilla moves and fights. It's so nice. Just from the design, all that. In the moment, his sound effects are so unique too. That roar, the first time I heard it in theaters, oh, that's so amazing. The roar is such an amazing sound effect. That really was a testament, you know, with the sound department, that roar they made. It's actually insane how powerful that roar is. And then you just go on to like the really unique atomic breath sequence where each one moves up a spike and stuff. Oh, it's just They did such a great job with making Godzilla in this film feel like Godzilla and just such a badass. It's perfect. I mean, I really enjoy it. But that's let's move on to one more thing. So the final fight in this film and the fights in this film and all the action stuff, there's a lot of focus on the humans. It's a human-driven movie. Gareth Edwards is a drama-ish writer. And, you know, a lot of people take issue to this, especially a lot of the newer fans and stuff. They don't really like that as much. But as someone who's recently watched the Showa era and has watched Godzilla my whole life, this has never bugged me. You know, and I think it's a really unique method that should be used more now in popular culture. I think this film does a really good job of keeping people wanting more for the very end for a very amazing cinematic final fight. The cutaways don't ever really bother me. Other than the airport one, the only reason that kind of bugs me is because it has such a good setup and stuff. But it's just like beyond that, people complain about the cutaways. If cutaways are used properly, they're not a problem. And I think a lot of the cutaways in this film are fine. And there's surprisingly a lot of stuff with the monsters in this movie. From the moment that all the stuff happens in Gojira to Godzilla's first arrival, that scene is just so amazing. You have the Mutos on one side, the male Muto just blacking out city and stuff. The tsunami is such a masterpiece of a scene. All that build up to the airport scene is just some of the best in the entire franchise. The only things that come close to it are like Era of Mechagodzilla's entrance and King of the Monsters Battle in Boston entrance. Those are the only ones that come close. So real quick edit from future me before I forget. This movie has always reminded me closest Terror of Mechagodzilla, both with the human story being really closely tied to the antagonist monsters, destruction scenes with both antagonist monsters, Godzilla just appearing out of nowhere and having an amazing entrance with build-up that gets cut away, and then later on, as the fight starts again, it cuts away again, back to the humans, no big issue, to an amazing brutal final fight that's just teeth and claw and very just beautiful cinematography and scores and all sorts of stuff, and just with a beautiful send-off ending. I've always found Terror to be close to 2014, but back to the original recording. Just the scale in this movie, the way the monsters feel, the cinematography, the effects, the suspension, all that builds up for some amazing action sequences we've seen throughout the movie. There were plenty of points, you know, we don't need that airport battle. We didn't need it. We got a hint of it. There's many other action sequences. There's some really good destruction in this film. The female Muto going on a rampage and stuff. The Golden Gate Bridge sequence is one of the best in the Monsterverse. All that stuff building up to the final fight once the Mutos and Godzilla reach San Francisco is so amazing. I love that whole sequence. You know, that's such a great sequence. And we get the Halo jump scene. One of the best scenes probably in cinema in recent years. I don't think it's overrated at all. It's such a great sequence, and 2001 Space Odyssey music was perfect choice for that. Just for them, from like metaphorically falling from heaven, diving into hell. It's such a great sequence, and you go into a final battle that's amazingly shot and just visually just beautiful. It's so great to watch these. They have really good wide shots and low angles and perspectives, and whenever it is something wide, there's always a human in shot or helicopter or something, or a bird or something, just to add some scale. They always make sure that there's something there that even whenever you can see the entire monster, just a wide shot or whatever, they always make sure, hey, everything else is puny compared to these. They don't, while they feel like animals, they also feel like gods among us. They're huge, and it's just all from just Gareth Edwards did such an amazing job with the scaling in this movie. They're powerful hitters, you know, they're big animals just absolutely destroying each other, and we can't do anything against them. No matter how hard we try, our weaponry just can't kill them. Nothing can kill them. The nukes we can try, it's just nothing's gonna work. And it just feels like a classic Godzilla movie. And you know, I know a lot of people complain about they think Godzilla took damage from the missiles in Golden Gate Bridge. No, they just hit a weak spot, and they just kind of like, you know, it's like they kind of just put him in a little bit of pain, but nothing like that would ever kill him. We've seen him withstand nukes in the very opening of the movie. Which reminds me, the opening of this movie is great. the score from Alexander Desplat, and just visually, it's such a beautiful scene. They did such a great job with that opening, and it's something I wish it would have like Kong Skull Island used it, and I wish other films like King of the Monsters would have used it. Maybe we'll get lucky with Godzilla vs. Kong. But with all that being said, I keep going on about all the stuff about the movie. Obvious, I love the movie, but let's talk about some other stuff. The music in this film is some of the best, I think, in the franchise, straight up. I think, obviously, Kira Fukube is something that's just almost impossible to top. It's Kira Fukube. He made some of the best music ever. However, for an original score in a film on its own, this score is one of the best scores in the entire franchise, in my opinion. It's very powerful. The Godzilla theme is just, it's so good. There's like songs like The Wave, you know, Chasing Godzilla, I think, or Falling Godzilla, and the Muto Hatch theme, all of that, 2 Against 1. They're all the music on the soundtrack's amazing. It goes along with just all this amazing stuff in the movie. The soundtrack is just that one thing that adds so much suspense and just so much to this movie in a great way. All that together made a great movie. And if you look at the behind the scenes, it's crazy. It's crazy how much effort they put into it. They made real scale models, and there were so many practical effects shockingly used in this film. Gareth being an indie director, I'm assuming that's from him, and they did it so well. And I think this movie just looks so visually appealing. Now, I know there's a common stereotype of the film that, it's too dark, you can't see anything when you do, it looks bad, yeah, whatever. The problem with that is not the film itself, it's a distributing issue. We've seen higher quality versions of this movie, and when we do, it looks amazing. It's the best CGI probably in the Monsterverse. Let's say I have a version of the movie that looks just fine, the 3D version. This is how it looks on my TV in the middle of the day with the sun coming in. Look at that. That's so clear. My TV is on standard brightness too. Yes, I have my phone, and my phone's not picking up the way it should be, but it's kind of blurry. But look at that. That looks fine to me. My version of the film isn't that dark. I'm watching it in the middle of the day where there's still light stuff coming in. I can see everything just fine. You know? Just, the only one coming close possibly is Kong Skull Island. But even that one, all the daytime shots, they're great and all. The problem, like I said, though, with this film is it was all with the distributing. Warner Brothers messed up so bad. I don't know what they were thinking when they were distributing it, putting like some big gray boxing over it, and I don't know what went wrong. I don't know what they were thinking when distributing it, but I promise you, the darkness in this film, that's not the movie. That's not the great one, and it's not a problem on the movie's fault. It's a problem on distributing Warner Bros. It looked much better in theaters. But, and honestly, to this day, we need a 4K cut of this movie. We've seen the potential of how good quality these can look. Just look at the CGI breakdown stuff of the film. We could have that quality of the movie if Warner Brothers and them would just distribute a good, proper version of the movie that could look like that. But with all that being said, looking back, I think 2014 is just a movie that deserves a lot more love. I just think a lot of the hatred that came from it all these years, mostly from bandwagoning or people just preferring certain types of movies stuff that aren't like this one, which is completely understandable and respectful, that's their opinion, versus mine. But I just think this one is an unappreciated, like almost near masterpiece of a movie. There's just a few things that drag it down, but without those, this would be easily the best or one of the best movies in the franchise. Although I don't think any movie could ever beat 54. But this movie's definitely, it's in my top 5, and it's one of my favorites. If you have not seen 2014, I highly recommend checking it out. I definitely think you would love it. If you haven't seen it, it's a movie I think you should see. And again, I recommend the 3D cut of the movie. So, thank you all for watching once again. Hope you enjoy. Happy 6 years to Godzilla 2014. Thank you all once again. As always, I'm High Flyers Tag Team. Turn on that bell notification, get notification for all future uploads. And as always, peace. Stay safe. Bye-bye.